Hi, I'm Alex Fraycon. You're listening to My Therapist and I, a podcast that isn't just about therapy, it is therapy. More specifically, my therapy.
In this session, I sit down with Dr. Steve and we talk about what it means to be a relational human being, which is something that it turns out I struggle with. So, hope you enjoy.
Hello. Episode 6 of My Therapist and I. How time flies.
Glad you're tracking.
How sessions fly. The amount of progress that I have made, I feel like I'm good. I'm good to go. I can wrap up. This has been a wonderful podcast. Thank you for joining me on this journey. No, I'm joking. I'm joined by world-renowned and esteemed therapist Dr. Stephen Harris.
No.
No, he doesn't like that. Dr. Steve doesn't like that. His words, not mine.
I've lived in Minnesota long enough to grab onto that part of the culture, you know.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing good.
I said this in the last.
This is like the Family Feud, you know, like Steve Harvey shoots like 5 or 6 of those shows at once, and so we don't have a costume change like he does, but we just came off of a big conversation about
Don't break the fourth wall.
Yeah.
They don't need to know.
Big conversation about, you know, alcohol and substances and the role that it's played in Alex's life. So it's kind of weird to take a break from that and then, you know, jump onto something else because my mind is still a little bit there for you and just appreciate, you know, the things you shared.
Well, yes, the last session that we had
That's
a week ago.
Alex is chewing. That's not me, by the way.
No, that's Dr. Steve chewing.
No, it's not.
Classic
I'm
Dr.
drinking.
Steve. Yes, the session we had last week was very intense when we talked about. Oh, it wasn't very intense.
No, it was intense for you.
It was intense for me.
I'm a sweaty guy, and I was not sweating, and we're in a hot room, and you were sweating.
Yeah, it's true. People of podcast land, it's true. I was sweating. Yeah, it's always tough to share something. I think what's always scary for me is this notion, shame, which can be healthy, but judgment, I think, can be really intimidating. And especially in this day and age where it's like things could be misinterpreted.
So what do you mean shame can be healthy?
Well,
there's a woman in the country right now, Brene Brown, making a buttload of money off of shame. And
are you familiar with John Bradshaw?
I'm familiar with him. It's been a long time.
So I read a book of his, and like from what I gathered, there's 2 types of shame. There's healthy shame and there's toxic shame. Healthy shame is basically what helps you adjust behavior that is bad towards others. Right? If I told Haley that I did not like her delicious dinner that she cooked, I told her that it sucked. I think she's a terrible cook, and I saw her cry, I would feel shame. And that shame would be healthy because it would say, hey, you care about this person. The thing that you said made her feel bad. Maybe we rectify this. And I think toxic shame is more like where you live in that moment and you don't let it go, and you don't. It's like a loop as opposed to oh, okay, I did something wrong, or you know, I can be better at something. I will make the adjustment and I will move forward, and life is good. Whereas toxic shame is like, I messed up. I'm so stupid. I can't believe I did that. I'm the worst. I'm awful.
Yeah, I like to think of those 2 things, and you know, leaving one. I think shame is not necessarily helpful. Guilt, I think, is helpful. Like feeling guilty, like your example with the dinner, right? You said something kind of nasty. You're kind of a jerk toward Haley.
Yep. Which this did not happen, by the way. Okay,
Yeah.
I treat Haley so well, and she loves me, and I love her.
So, my guilt gets to me. Yep, I own that I said this horrible thing. I made her feel bad, and now I want to rectify it, like you said. The shame is that I think all shame is probably somewhat toxic.
Yeah.
You know. So, but guilt, like, yep, I did that, and there's a way for me to rectify. There's a way for me to repair what I did. I'm willing to take ownership of it instead of shame, which is a constant beating down of I'm not worthy. I have no right. I'm this horrible person. And I think there are a lot of people who struggle with that, but I don't I've heard some therapists say that they don't let their clients stay in guilt. I don't mind my clients grabbing onto guilt and acknowledging where they could have made different choices, could have stepped up in a little different way. But the shame part is not, I don't think it's ever helpful.
Do you feel like we just kind of described the same thing but use different
Yes,
words?
Totally.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But I don't need John Bradshaw getting a royalty off of
It
a
is
podcast
crazy.
that's making no money.
That. Well, so you think
Oh,
I'm
maybe.
swimming in bags of money here?
All right.
No, yeah, it is kind of crazy. It would be interesting to hear your take as a professional and as an educator on, there's therapy and clinical work, and then I feel like there's commercial therapy, right? Which is these people who are making tons of money and, are they at odds with one another?
Well, therapists make money. I mean,
Yes. Okay. Another to make an analogy, there's in religion, there's like your preacher at your church, and then there's the mega church preachers who are on TV, and Joel Osteen. Like, is there that sort of dynamic where it's like, okay, you're doing something different and you're profiting a ton, and you're kind of watering it down versus the authentic, real thing?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know Joel Osteen, but I'm sure there are a number of people that his message is resonating with a number
Yep.
of people.
Yep. What a diplomatic answer.
Yeah.
I don't want to throw shade at anyone. I respect that, Dr. Steve. So yeah, the last session was a good example of how one can be vulnerable in therapy. And to anyone listening, I was scared, and it is scary. And I really appreciated Dr. Steve saying something like, hey, he told me, I appreciate you sharing it. And that meant a lot to me, because I think what I was most scared of was that he was going to judge me or something, or he was going to say something mean, and that can be so scary in a therapy session, right? Because you're talking to a stranger, and you don't know how they're going to take it. But and I've been in situations where I've had therapists I had one really nasty first session with someone once, and they passed judgment, and they were really aggressive, hey, if you don't stop this, you're going to jail. They were really aggressive, and it sucked, and I had to walk out. And I famously asked her how much she was making an hour to be an asshole. And she didn't like that. But I'm telling you, Dr. Steve, that was when I was at my limit. I walked the walk until I had no more. But anyway, my point being, sometimes you just have to put yourself out there, and 9 times out of 10, it's going to be really good. But if there is that one time where it goes bad, don't sweat it. There's plenty of therapists out there. Keep trying. All that aside, I have a question for you. This is going to be a little bit more vicissitude-y, and
Okay.
so I apologize in advance. But earlier in our sessions, I think it was maybe the Google Maps episode, or even the first episode, you had this really profound quote, which you say profound things all the time, as you know. It was, the world shrinks when you share your humanity with someone else. This is going to sound weird, but do you think it's possible to almost be addicted to the world shrinking?
Say more.
So something that I've been thinking about is, I love making and I love creating, and I want to think that I'm doing it for good, healthy reasons. But another part of me too is is my creativity and my desire to connect with others, could that be a little, I don't want to say vain, but could there be something there of I just want that feeling where I can share my humanity, and I connect with someone, and I'm continually pursuing that feeling of putting myself out there and being accepted, or, because there's
Kind of a therapy junkie.
Yeah, not even a therapy junkie, but when we released this podcast, there was this rush of oh man, am I going to be judged? Are people going to hate me? And people said really nice things. They sent nice texts, got some good messages, and that feeling, there's a kind of weird rush there. I was oh, I'm being seen. I'm being heard. This is awesome. And I'm kind of like, is that, I don't know. Feels kind of unhealthy in a weird way, right? Because I find myself wanting, it's like, okay, let's do it again. Let's do it again. Let's put ourselves out there. Yeah.
So is the motivation to get that feeling? Is the motivation?
I hope not.
Is it once again back to the mission of wanting to expand the conversation on mental wellness and emotional well-being? I mean, are you like happy that, hey, I'm one step closer to this goal, or we've produced one more brick for this, building,
yes,
the foundation of the building or whatever. If you're worried that you're a therapy junkie, or you're wanting to expose yourself to the world so that you can get feedback, well, that's probably a different conversation.
Yeah, I hope it isn't. But there's something, I don't know, there's something fascinating about this idea of like, the world definitely does shrink when you share your humanity with other people. And that can be a really good feeling. And so how my brain works is it'll start spinning and turning and being like, well, is that just one of many things that one could get addicted to?
Sure.
Yeah.
I don't know that there's a lot of benefit in going down that road unless it's becoming problematic.
Very true.
You also heard feedback. You got a lot of feedback from people that said, hey, podcast is great. You're tackling a big thing. And then you had a friend, I want to say,
yeah,
I don't know. Am I getting the name right?
Who are, but I don't think I want to use your name, so I think I'm going to bleep that out.
Okay.
Because I don't think I'm going to use names.
That's great. And so you had feedback from a friend who said, oh, it's nice, Alex, but you're not really hitting the hard things. Like when I go, it's this, whoa, it's this heavy.
Yep.
And so that's, if you're opening yourself up and you're truly that junkie, you're going to get feedback that's not going to resonate so well. Not everything you touch is going to turn to gold.
Oh, yes. Don't get me started on that. I've touched many things that are not gold. Yeah, it was just a thought I had. So I went twice a year. So let me share more about my life with you, Dr. Steve. Twice a year I drive from Minneapolis to Florida, between Minneapolis and Florida.
Because as a punishment? Or?
Nope. My parents live in Florida. They spend the summer up here to be with my brother and I. I drive their car in between twice a year.
And they fly up.
Yep. Nice. I like doing this. Uh-huh. I love driving. It's 1,800 miles. It takes me 26 hours. I do it in 2 days. Mm-hmm. I just did it 2 weeks ago. And I can't tell you, it's so therapeutic for me.
You can tell me.
I can't tell you. But there's a laugh track on here. I don't know which button it is. Okay. And as I was on that trip, my mind was just thinking, and I think that's why I like doing it, because it gives me the freedom to just think about stuff. And I have a little bit of stimulation, obviously, in the sense that I'm driving and I'm focused. So I get in this weird Zen-like state of being engaged, but also like daydreaming. And I just, that thought popped into my head of like, well, is it possible for one to become too focused on sharing their humanity with others? And then I was like, well, that could be something that I'm susceptible to, but that's my neurosis, I think, starting to pick up.
Maybe, but if you had people in your life who could be real with you, they could. Somebody like Haley, you talk about Haley here. Yep. I don't know if you want me to use
her name is fine. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Somebody like Haley who's that close to you could say, "Hey, I think you're going overboard here. I think this has gone from a mission of expanding the conversation of mental health to Alex talks about the weirdest things that pop into his head."
I am.
You need people like that in your life.
Yes, I do.
People who are willing to be straight up with you, even when it's going to jeopardize the friendship.
And this will make me a little sad to say this, I feel like I don't have a lot of those people. Mm-hmm. I feel like the vast majority of them are paid professionals. Unfortunately, you being now one of them, Dr. Steve, like, you know what I mean? Like Haley.
Oh, the people who will do that for you are paid professionals.
Yeah. I have one friend who, he was really psyched about this podcast, ironically enough. He and I used to be really close in college. We were like at the hip. It was great. Did you ever see the TV show Scrubs?
Yeah.
That was us.
Yeah. Okay.
It's just great. But I digress. We kind of have fallen out of touch since then, but he reached out immediately when the podcast came out. He was so excited. He and I once had this conversation where he was like, Alex, what I like about you is I feel like no matter what happens, I can text you and you will give me a raw, honest opinion. And I feel the same way with him. Some other people I've known for like 10, 20 years, I feel like they either would be like, I don't want to answer that question. Like,
Yeah, don't put me in that spot.
yeah. Or they would just, Minnesota nice it up. And sometimes I worry, Haley and I are very close, but I think sometimes she's told me, she's like, I mean, I kind of want to tell you what I think, but I also don't want to hurt your feelings. So I'm conflicted that way. And
that's, I think that's an art to be able to do that well. Like, hey, I'm going to say something and, or you're going to ask me a question and do you want my real response or do you want me to sugarcoat it? That's the kind of the proverbial, does this make me look fat?
yes.
What do you want?
Yes.
Do you want to know or do you not want to know?
Or do you just want to be comforted?
Yeah.
And reassured?
Right. Because the reality is, you know how fat you are. We all know how fat we are. We all know how skinny.
Yeah.
We all know our imperfections. And so when you have a blind spot, and someone says, "Hey, I think you need to think about this."
I love to a fault giving people their blind spots. Like sometimes they won't even ask for it. I'll just be like, "Hey, just so you know, this is your blind spot," and that's why they don't like me, which rightfully so. Like I get it. I don't know, but the reason I'm so keen to do it is because to me it's so valuable. When someone does it to me, I'm like, "Oh, thank you." Assuming I have a relationship with them.
That's the key.
Yeah. And
there's lots of people who don't know you be willing to tell you your blind spot.
the
Right.
comment section.
And it doesn't
attest to that.
Yeah, right. Comment sections, people lighten each other up in the comment section. So, but the person who can tell you about your blind spots and say, and I'll be here in the morning.
Yes.
And I'll be here tonight.
Still love you. Still
Right.
think you're awesome. Still think you're great.
That's hard. We as human beings, we get defensive. We don't want to hear things we don't want to hear. And it's tough.
Based on the work you've done, and with couples and stuff, like, is there advice in terms of how to facilitate that? Like how to create an environment where it's like, hey, I want you to feel comfortable pointing out my blind spots, and I want you to feel comfortable with me giving you your blind spots.
I think when you're getting into any kind of relationship, right, you can determine the level of that openness and honesty. How real do you want me? You just asked me this question. Do you want the honest, or do you want me to hold back? When you do those things, you run the risk of increasing intimacy, right? I say run the risk, but that's the byproduct of being real with somebody else. Okay, this person is going to tell me how it is, and they're not going to sugarcoat it. I know I can try. I mean, that's what you want in a relationship. You want that kind of trust, so that someone says, "I'm going to give you the straight poop."
Does it surprise you where I feel like I want that more of that? I mean, I would love to have more of that in my life, and I feel like I lack it. And I don't know if that's my fault or what.
I'm not surprised by it, but I think you asked, one of the questions you asked was, how do you get that?
Yeah.
I think as you're getting into a relationship, you have to ask those questions.
Yeah.
Do you want, there's something that's been on my mind. Do you want to hear about it?
Yeah.
Are you interested in what I have to say? Do we want to be that close?
Yeah.
No, I don't want to be that close.
Yeah. So that can hurt.
Yeah. Okay. Then I'll zip it. I'll shut it.
George, I always feel weird saying my other therapist because I don't want you to be like, you're seeing someone else.
I'm the other therapist.
Yeah. So George,
he has way more to be jealous about than I do.
George, once I had a similar conversation with him, and he was like, this was years ago, and he was like, it's possible that like you want more out of friends than friends want out of you.
Maybe.
And that was really weird and hard to hear, because I was like, yeah, like maybe I am just kind of an intense guy. And like maybe a lot of people look at me as like, yeah, I like being around Alex like once a month, and I don't need to have a really in-depth conversation with him about life and vicissitudes. I'm going to use that word so much, by the way. Love that word. Whereas me, I'm like, come on, vicissitude, you know, like.
You
It
want
can
to
be
go
tough.
deeper.
Yeah. And it can sometimes feel isolating because it's like, you know, there's not as many. But, and then another part of my brain's like, maybe this is an invitation to just kind of enjoy simpler relationships with people.
Sometimes people just want to cuddle. They don't want to go all
Yeah.
the way. You know,
Yeah. That's like my fiance, Haley, loves to cuddle, not the other part. I mean, you just mentioning cuddling. Some people just like to cuddle. That made me think of Haley because she loves to cuddle. She's a big cuddler. And I think she would say, you know, sometimes, Alex, I don't want to talk. I just want to snuggle.
Yeah.
I don't want to go to the deep. I just
Right.
want to snug. And in my brain, I'm like, who wants to go deep? You know?
Right.
So that can be isolating. Not isolating, but sometimes I feel a little lonely in that regard.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, stay there.
Stay there.
Yeah. What do you mean lonely?
Lonely in the sense that, like, I feel like every human has a sweet spot in terms of, well, let me talk about me. I feel like in terms of my, like, relational happiness, I'd have a sweet spot of, like, a number of interactions I could have per day where I could, you know, with different people where I could talk about real things. Like I could talk about real emotions with someone. I can talk about deep thoughts with someone. And then I could just have meaningless banter with someone. And I feel bad for Haley because I'm dumping all of those on her right now, you know.
Dumping all the deep on her.
Yeah, like I want to have banter. Like you're my
Oh.
banter. You're my
The
deep
whole range,
thoughts.
the whole spectrum.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
my deep emotional. And she's like, come on, I can't do all these things. You know, I don't want to. And, you know, I'd like to have a go-to for each one. It's just kind of hard to develop relationships like that. Maybe that's like all humans would hear me say this and be like, yeah, dude, it's called life. Well, you know, I feel the same way, but my brain is like, I'm sure everyone else has all of their people and I'm the only one who does not have their people. That's how I feel.
I imagine that you are not like most people.
Yeah.
In this regard, that if you've been through years of therapy, I mean, therapy is like this place where you have a person in your face telling you have to go deeper, telling you stay with this for a little bit. You just talked about loneliness. I'm at this lonely place and you wanted to get off, and I'm like, no, we're going back there. So you have voluntarily subjected yourself to go deeper. And it can be unfulfilling not to go deep. Like you might be the kind of guy who gets bothered by superficial conversations.
You have no idea. Yes.
Like there might be people that like, hey, we're going to go out with this group or that couple or whatever. And you're like,
Yep.
you know, and it's going to be an evening of not getting deep. And then when the conversation does get close to deep, you're like, okay, this is what I wanted. This is what I was hoping I was going to get. So the challenge I imagine for you is, you know, do people see you as kind of needing more from them than they can possibly give?
Yeah, that would make me so sad. Like, I don't want to feel like, I bet you a lot of people feel that way. Or worse yet, what I'm afraid of is that people sense that feel like I'm bored with them or something like that.
Yeah.
And it makes me seem like a dick.
Yeah.
Where it's like, because people are nice, you know? Like everyone's at on a different path and going at a different speed, and I'm not here to judge, but part of me is like, hey, this is the speed I'm on. Either let's do this or I'm out of here. I don't got time to waste. My TV's turning off in 50 years. I only got so much time.
Right.
So yeah, that is definitely something that I struggle with, and I feel bad about other people's experiencing it. Like if it feels negative on their end, right? Like if it feels like I'm dismissive.
Do you ever ask them, like,
no,
am I coming across as kind of a jerk tonight? Or,
Yep.
I'm sorry.
If
the
I did,
conversation has kind
though,
of been boring.
If I did, would they answer?
I don't know. But when you ask those kinds of questions in counseling training, we call it immediacy. When you're talking about what's going on right now, like if you're in a conversation, you're like, it feels like we're not talking about what we need to talk about, or it feels like we're skirting around a bigger issue. Like, I'll give you an example. When 9/11 happened, I was having I had a session. I had sessions planned for that night. I was living in Texas at the time, and 4 of my 5 clients called and said, not a good night to talk on 9/11,
Yep.
the evening of 9/11. One client decided to keep the appointment. And this particular client was talking about her complaints with her parents and challenges and, kind of the family she grew up in. And it was overwhelming to me. Like I couldn't concentrate on the hard part, the hardships that she was talking about, which were legitimate, hardships that she had
But
experienced. It seemed to pale in comparison to
What
the
was going
fact that these buildings were under attack. And I just said, in the middle of her talking, I said, it was so bad that some people jumped out of the buildings, that it was a better option to jump out of a building than to think you might get rescued. And she was like, what are you talking about? Like, I can't focus on what you're talking about because of this thing that I witnessed all day today.
Yeah.
All day I was looking at these towers and then coming down and the planes, and I can't get my mind off that. So I don't know. I think if you can call immediacy to, you're at dinner with friends and like, hey, we keep talking about this stuff here, and I'm wondering if you guys would like to shift the conversation.
Yeah.
Or, you got to be prepared for people to say, no, this is where I want to stay. I want to stay in complaining mode or in whatever the mode is that's keeping you from talking about what you feel are the deeper.
Yeah. And I think I can, to your point, I can ask, and also I can listen to how they respond. And if they say yes, great. And if they say no, also great. At least I asked. I'm not going to pass judgment.
Now you can have your expectations.
Yep. Now I can know next time, hey, this is most likely what we're going to be like, so I can make a decision.
Right.
Yeah. I really would enjoy personally asking more people that I've known for a while, like, hey, when we hang out, like do I come across as not having fun, or like, do I stress you out? Does being around me feel stressful? Because I have an inkling that's for some people it kind of is. So we should ask Haley. We should get Haley on here. She'd be like, oh my God, yes. So stressful being around him. No, she'd be like, he's the best. I love him. We're buds. That's her, by the way. Did you notice that? I didn't know if you were going to feel weird having a picture of us right next to you
that's
on here.
fine. That's fine.
Okay. Well, yeah. I think that's something I can work on. And for our next session, I'm going to have this conversation with one of my friends. I'm going to ask him, be like, can I be honest with you? Like, is it weird hanging out with me? Do you ever feel stressed out? Like I need you to go deeper and stuff like that. Or what's your experience like hanging out with me? And maybe they're just like, it's fine. And then I'll know, okay, they don't want to go deep, but maybe they give me some interesting
Or maybe
insight.
it is fine.
Yeah, yeah.
And maybe that's as deep as it goes. Like, yeah, it's fine. That's one of the things we like about you is you push the envelope of our conversation a little bit. You make us think a little deeper.
Sweet. Well, I'm going to widen this down. So as always, Dr. Steve, thank you for listening and to my thoughts and entertaining them and offering your world-renowned analysis.
You gotta stop.
I'll stop.
One perspective. That's all it is.
Yeah. In a sea of millions of perspectives.
Right. And vicissitudes.
It's such a great word. I'm going to keep using it. People will be like, oh, what's that word? I'll be like, well, let me
now
tell
I'm
you.
going to have to look it up. I don't know if I ever even used it right. So.
It's provocative. It's just one of those words where you're like, ooh, that's just a smart word. You don't need to know what it means. But thank you for your time, and I look forward to our next session.
All right.
All right. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.